Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the mechanics really about how this gets passed. So it's in the House, it's a House conference resolution. If it passes there, then does it go to the Senate?
Yes.
And if it passes there, is that it? Because I understand the governor does not have to sign off on it.
That's correct. That's correct.
So right now it's in the House, and what committee is it in?
It's the House Committee on State Affairs.
State Affairs.
House Committee on State Affairs. My best understanding is that it got referred to that committee just a few days ago, really, like 129.
And will there be hearings on it?
I would expect so. I would think so. As far as I can recall, in prior, this is prior sessions have tried to enact a concurrent resolution like this, and there's been testimony on it.
I've got a couple of things here. One is that you mentioned about when we got our Constitution. That Constitutional Convention is the only thing we have as precedent for what happened. And in that one you said where they met for one reason and came up with something else. Well, that actually really scares me because that's the precedent we have. So, you know, the runaway convention seems even more reality knowing that that's the only guideline there is.
So what you'll hear supporters of a convention of the states argue is that there is in fact precedent, and certainly many states draft their own state constitutions through conventions, and those conventions have developed a tradition of procedures where the state legislature calls the convention, and so there is precedent at the state level. And I guess the biggest, as I understand it, the main organization dedicated to the Convention of the States is actually called Convention of the States. And they say, no, 1787, that was kind of an all-purpose convention. It wasn't a specific convention. You have to differentiate specific conventions from kind of general purpose conventions. But I just don't think that distinction really exists. And I think that, to the extent that there's any precedent from the state level or even other countries, why would Congress certainly won't feel bound by it? Nor would it seem to me with the convention itself.
I do have another question about the delegates who would be chosen to go to this. Is there a specification on how they are chosen? You said they could be representatives from Congress.
Yeah, so let me so I make sure I'm giving accurate information. Let me turn to it. The qualifications for delegates, which are called commissioners, actually in this concurrent resolution, is that they shall be residents of Idaho for at least 6 months prior to their appointment, and otherwise meet the qualifications necessary to hold office in the legislature of the state of Idaho. It goes on to say specifically, commissioners and alternates may include persons holding public office, except no member of the U.S. House of Representatives or Senate shall be eligible. So our federal congressional delegation can't be. And then each house of the Idaho legislature, Idaho House of Representatives, Idaho Senate, selects by a simple majority vote 3 commissioners who meet the eligibility requirements. So House picks 3, Senate picks 3. It says at least 1 commissioner from each chamber shall not be a sitting member of the legislature of the state at the time of appointment, which means that 2 of the 3 can be sitting legislators. So that accounts for 6, 3 from each of the chambers. And then each chamber nominates additional persons to serve as alternates for a total of 4 alternates. The alternates decide, the original commissioners decide on a priority list of these alternates, and it seems like the alternates can be members of the legislature. And the first nominee in priority among the alternates is the 7th commissioner. So you come up with 7 delegates or commissioners and 3 alternates, chosen, 6 of whom were chosen by a simple majority of each shape. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any expiration date on these calls for a convention? If a state calls for one and it takes 10 years to build to that 34 number, is that still a valid call even though that legislator might have, the makeup of it might have changed?
The questions about that arise as well. That's actually addressed in the concurrent resolution. It says this application, this concurrent resolution, if adopted, shall constitute a continuing application for such convention. But it does have an expiration date of 10 years. 10 years. Now, questions can arise, and actually have arisen, what happens within 10 years if the later legislator decides to revoke the resolution? Is it then a dead letter, or does it still count? It's not clear. Again, nothing in Article 5 would prevent Congress from saying, we don't care that it was later withdrawn, we're going to count it anyway. I have a question for you all. Does your sense of the wisdom of a constitutional convention turn on what specific amendments it might consider? I'll give you an example. So certainly, the balanced budget amendment is associated with fiscal conservatives. But there's also a move afoot to amend the Constitution to overrule the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United, which struck down limits on campaign finance. So I'm just wondering whether you think that the wisdom of a convention varies depending on what the convention might be called upon to do. And certainly with respect to something like the Citizens United opinion, short of the Supreme Court overruling itself, which is unlikely anytime soon, can only be changed by a constitutional amendment. Any thoughts on that? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Maybe not so much on that, although I think that's a great start. But another thought that's been circulating is trying to amend the electoral process itself and to eliminate the electoral college. And so a runaway convention might allow both of those to come in, and if we only need 18% of the population to eventually ratify such things, that might actually make it if we organize well enough.
Yeah,
But it would take mammoth organizing.
it is true. It is true. Of course, one worries that the forces that can coalesce and have the wherewithal to coalesce and present a concerted effort to get states to sign on to a convention aren't always the ones that are operating in the public interest. Often they are self-interested and particularly have financial resources and financial interests at stake. Yes? Maureen?
Well, I'm familiar with an organization called ALEC or ALEC. It's the American Legislative Exchange Council. And they are a group of conservative, it's a conservative group which writes turnkey legislation that it presents to states, which often adopt it in whole cloth without really any changes. And I'm thinking, especially when you're talking about having a constitution to reduce the breadth of the commerce power, is there a group like this that is behind the existing group of states that have signed on to this? Or is there an entity that's inciting states to have a constitutional convention right now?
Good question.
I was under the impression that it is ALEC that's pushing it. Seems to be
For all
pushing
states.
No, because I'm tied to convention of states. The convention of states project is a function of citizens for self-government. One of the founders of the Tea Party, anyway, very active in that. other citizens of self-government, they are the umbrella for the Convention of States. The designation of a constitutional convention is critical. The difference between that and an amendments convention is makes one can be general because you want it to be, and we would want it to be. The other cannot be because we'd be afraid if it was. That makes sense to me. These are local people trying to get the power of the government back to the states where it belongs. Not all of it, but not like it was under the Articles of Confederation. But just to make it manageable, make those people back there answerable to us, which they're not right now.
So what would that look like? I can't help wondering. I mean, you know,
Can't imagine.
what would a constitutional amendment that would try to return power to the states and put curbs, meaningful curbs on the federal government, what would that look like? What would it sound like? I mean, how would you?
Well,
how would you
one
word
is
it?
that would be popular would be a redefinition back to the original meaning of the Commerce Clause. Now it's used to do spend money on anything they want to, and they do it. If there are other things that be worthwhile, environmental laws, stuff like that, that ought to be under its own heading, not commerce. I mean, they can legislate what goes on in your backyard in the mud puddle with that clause, and it puts their little fingers in everybody's pocket.